Ko ranganui ki ronga, ko papatua nui ku kiraro, ko tātou ta ira tangata, ki wanganui ti hei mauri ora. Sky Father above, Mother Earth below, all of us in the middle, breath of life. Morena.
My mic's not on, that's the problem. Thank you. Good morning, Stephanie. Welcome. Right. I muted myself. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Right. Stephanie is a sector manager from the Office of the Auditor General and responsible for this council as well as a couple of others. All right. Welcome, Stephanie. Now, do we have any apologies? We're at Councillor Chase online. Oh, and welcome, Fiona. I'm not sure where you are, Fiona.
Oh, I can see you. So
No. I'm not sure where your background. That's all. Is it actually?
Oh, that's the walking bridge in Palmerston North over the
that's all right.
River.
I thought you might be working for outside at the moment. All right. Thank you. Right. So no formal apologies. Any public forum? No public forum. There's no additional items for the agenda. However, what we'd like to do is, in terms of the agenda order, I know we've got both Fiona and Stephanie here, but we've got an item on 7.4, our risk management report. If we could bring that forward. Sorry, 7.7. 7.7, thank you, wrong one. 7.7, the direct debit investigation on page 85. If we could bring that forward as the officer needs to leave, and then we'll just resume the agenda as it is. I trust that's okay with everyone. Is that okay with both Fiona and Stephanie? It's just that I think it might be useful for your understanding as well, some of the discussion about this issue. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest that need to be declared? None noted, but if there are any, please let us know. Confirmation of our minutes held way back on the 11th of December. Take those as read. Are there any comments, corrections? That being the case, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Carey, do I have a seconder? Worship the Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. So if we could jump to 7.7, page 85, and welcome Roger to the table. Thank you very much, Roger. Take your report as read, but is there any further information or key highlights you want to bring to the committee's attention? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this item forward. Mayor Tracy, councillors, as the Chair has said, if we can take this report as read, just a couple of things I'd like to highlight before taking any questions. The biggest challenge we're facing is people. Unfortunately, we've lost a couple of, or in particular one very experienced lady due to paternity leave, which leaves a big gap. So we've managed to find one, and we hope to appoint a second very shortly to fill one of the other gaps, but we're still struggling to get ahead, I'll be totally honest. And I think you'll see from the figures in terms of the inbox that we haven't made as much progress as we would like to. So we've got another option that we're investigating in terms of how we might be able to add some additional resources to that team. The key challenge we have right now is to train the new staff. So there's over 80 different tasks that are completed across the rates team, and one particular task, the task relating to settlements, the directions for that task is 76 pages. So I'm just trying to give you some context. It's not a lot of these tasks are not simple, and we have some legacy issues that have challenged us for some time that we urgently need to address, but invariably these legacy issues take quite some time to resolve. So I just wanted to highlight that firstly, and then the other red item 6.3.3, we've made some really good progress in terms of mapping a lot of our tasks, but we still have about approximately half of them to review the existing mapping and to update that. So it's still quite a lot of work involved in this area as well. Obviously it's critical, especially in being able to pass on knowledge to new staff. But the lady that's just gone on paternity leave is the one that was driving that process. So we've now got to find someone with the right skills and experience to extract this information and then to be able to update our ProMaps. So, Mr. Chair, those are the two items in particular that I wanted to highlight. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Roger, for the update, and thanks for all the work that you're doing in that team. I do have a few questions on this report. I found the report a little bit concerning, especially considering the issues and the impact that the direct debit issue had on ratepayers and on our council team. So my first question is, will the apparent pressure that you've highlighted in there, will that introduce or create the possibility of further errors and issues? So what I'm looking for is, I guess, a level of confidence that the pressure that's on the team, which is very apparent from your report, isn't going to introduce more issues and more problems for our ratepayers and for our council.
I'm not an expert in rates, but my observation is that I don't think it's going to introduce any new problems or challenges for our ratepayers, but there are a number of existing problems and challenges that our ratepayers face and have faced for some time that still have to be addressed.
Thanks, Roger. I would be keen somehow to get some kind of assurance that pressure isn't potentially going to cause more problems. One thing that jumped out at me was, and this is something that we have and have had in different departments, the issue of recruiting staff to key roles. With that being the case in this area, has there been any active consideration given to working with other councils, perhaps in some kind of shared service arrangement, to be able to help fill the human gap within our teams? Because we are going to need to do something to fill the gap. Just as an aside to that, and the Chief Executive will be aware, from a personal perspective, I have experienced the delay within the inbox through an organisation that I'm a part of. So just wondering, has there been any active consideration to that, perhaps through to the Chief Executive?
Yes, good morning everyone. Through the Chair, yes, they certainly have. We've discussed that right throughout the process. I think the challenge there is that everyone's systems are so different. You still need to provide them almost the same level of training to bring them up to speed as well, and it is then taking resource away from another council. And speaking to some other chief executives, resourcing is a problem right across the board. I certainly think a way to go into the future when we start using same systems and processes is the way to go to make things more efficient, but I think we are quite a way from that at this point. Just around your concerns, I think, senior management share those concerns as well, so we're trying to put in all the resources into there to minimise that risk. At the moment we're barely keeping our head above the water to keep up with the day-to-day requirements of the team because they are under-resourced. But as Roger said, we have a significant backlog that we're trying to work through as well, and we're trying to put some extra process in place for that. And for instance, Eleanor would get disrupted throughout the day. So we've everything goes through Roger between the hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. to allow her to concentrate on her functions without getting distracted. So there are small little operational improvements that we're making to try and get ahead of this. But while we're not fully resourced, that will take some time. But I think the assurance we can give is that those key and critical tasks are the focus. Yeah, that's what we're working on at the moment. And behind the scenes, Raj and Roger and others and Rebecca are still looking at some of these improvements through this as well.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. I certainly concur with the questions from Councillor Scott, but I received some feedback in the weekend which, based on the comment you've just made, Brian, and I reflect in your report, Roger, at item 6.3, the responsibility for the debtor management's been transferred to DMC. So I'm curious to understand how the communication of that part of the responsibility has occurred with our ratepayers. The ratepayer I spoke to was offended hugely that he had a very formal debt collection notice from a firm that he said didn't look like it was from council, Sharon. And I said, well, you know, I know that they're trying to address some of the issues. But he then went on to indicate to me that whoever that wonderful woman was able to sort it out, and he was referring to Eleanor. So my question is, given the attempt to try and divert some of, the BAU and addressing this, you've just indicated that Roger is obviously intercepting those between the hours of 8 and 2, but this ratepayer still got through to one of the people who's completely bogged down in trying to help address these things. So A, it's around communication of a different organisation managing the debt, and B, the strategies you have in place to rectify. Thank you, Roger. Is this what I do?
Thanks very much, Sharon. Through you, Mr. Chair. The decision was made to transfer all debt to DMC. The way that was primarily instigated was through the sending of letters, I think on the 21st of January, to all those who hadn't paid instalment 1 and instalment 2, or hadn't fully paid instalment 1 or instalment 2, or both. I think there were over 600 ratepayers. And I know that's probably, I'd describe it as quite a blunt instrument, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of choice right at the moment, and there have been a number of very upset ratepayers. I've spoken to a number of them personally, and in some cases had to apologise to them because there's been errors made on our behalf. But in order to alleviate this demand on the team's time, and also to start being much more proactive in gathering the debt, this was the decision that was made. And I'd like to make the comment that so far it appears to be quite successful. We've had a lot of ratepayers contacting DMC or council and making arrangements to pay their outstanding debt. So from that perspective, that's been very positive, and I know Raj is going to present a report to the Finance and Performance Committee next month. But yes, there are some upset ratepayers, and unfortunately, and in some cases we've just had to apologise to them. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. And very similar lines, I've also had contact with ratepayers that have received those letters, and that it is quite a shock when you get one in. Just to, I guess the communication as to the why in the intro, I'm not sure if that was carried out with DMC so that people did understand that. But along with, around talking to other councils and NWLS and what could be done, is there other parts like you've actioned with DMC? Like, could the settlements be carried out by seconding someone else just to alleviate that pressure? Because I have a look at the timelines that, you're looking to have this action by, and they seem, it just seems very, very tough call to get all through that, considering the progress that has been made. And I guess, when you're out in the community, and I had one on the weekend where, it does create a trust issue that a person hasn't been responded to.
We haven't investigated specifically anyone taking on any other particular part of the tasks. From my perspective, it's a matter of having the right people in the right place. We've got the right staff in the right place, and they've had the training to, for example, complete settlements. It's a fairly simple process. It's a very critical one. We have to get it right, because if we don't, then we miss out on money. But it's a fairly, methodical process. So once someone's trained, then we have that confidence, but it's just been retaining the staff with the skills and experience to be able to deliver those services. So at the moment, we're busy training them. I'm not aware of MWLAS providing any other support in that way. We did, I think it's worth mentioning, we did bring Raj, I believe, arranged for a lady to come in who had been running a rates team. I can't remember in which council. But unfortunately, she wasn't familiar with the systems and processes here at Tararua, and a lot of the work that she was doing ended up back on Eleanor's desk. So unfortunately, there wasn't really a viable solution in terms of addressing the challenge we face.
Can I just make one other point too around the debt management side of things, is that prior to this issue, how we managed debt was very lenient, which in a lot of ways can cause a lot of problems, where you sort of get into sort of arrangements with ratepayers, and in a lot of ways it fails them because they get further and further behind, where it becomes no longer manageable. So I guess one of the challenges is that we've gone from very lenient to quite stringent, I guess, in terms of our debt management, and it will take some of the community a bit of time to come up to speed. But as Roger said, that a lot of these accounts are getting paid a lot quicker than I think they ever have been. So there is good outcomes with this as well.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. So going forward, you talked a lot about operational stuff that you're catching up with, and it's all staff-based. So, pray it doesn't happen, but if one's on pregnant leave and somebody could get hit by a bus, you're in a worse position. What have you changed in an operational sense and a software side of it yet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from an operational sense, I think the key thing is mapping a lot of these tasks, because we're very conscious that if some of the key staff were to be hospitalised or something, that we'd be in serious trouble. So that's one key step that we've been working through, and we need to continue to work through. So that was my first response. Sorry, can you just clarify? Software. So right at the moment, the team are testing a particular change to the software. We have reached out to Civica, the company that provides authority, and asked for a meeting with them, because we want to look at what other opportunities we have to improve what we're doing. So I'm just waiting for that lady to get back so we can then...
Supplementary to that, Philip. So going probably back to what Councillor Scott said, is there a base out there, like, let's say, related to a car, for example? Everyone knows a certain car is a good one, so they go and buy that car. Has there been in-depth research done to what's the flavour of the month? Because there must be, how many councils are there in New Zealand? 67? 67. So we're not sitting out on an island by ourselves.
Yeah, so we use a system called Authority. We know of a number of other councils that use that same system. I understand that PNCC has just gone to this system now.
So where does that rate in the systems of systems?
Well,
number 1, number 2, number 3?
I couldn't tell
number
you.
13?
I don't know. I'm just aware that there are 2 major systems that most councils appear to be using, and we've chosen the Authority one. But
that's the one of those 2?
That's one of those 2.
Thank you.
But I would make the comment, though, if we were to change systems...
I think we're going off subject here, right? But I think, that's probably a discussion for another day. But the issue for me is that we've got what we've got in terms of the system. Now, my experience in changing a basic rating system is a 2 to 3 year process. I am aware of one regional council that decided to take on the rates off the territorials. That was a 3-year lead-in before they were able to get it. So I would actually say in changing a system like this, you can't do it overnight. And my experience is, while there are a number of lead systems, and the officers talked about it, there are two, right? Every system has advantages and disadvantages, and you've got to weigh them, each of those up before you can do it. And rushing to change a system would actually create significant risk for the council.
That's good. It's understanding the science, you see. So that's good. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Just a very, very quick question, having a look at your table of 6.2.1 in particular, which is the number of outstanding inquiries in the inbox, and then also 6.3.3, which is the mapping. Those are the two that you spoke about, Roger, and that certainly jumped out at me. Both of those are in the red, so they are off track. Could you confirm, or do you have any prediction on when you'll be able to make some significant progress on the mapping and get those the inbox under control? I'm just trying to get an idea of how we feel like we might be tracking, because it's showing in red.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. So I've got some updated figures with effect today. We've got 10,034 total emails and 487 unread emails. So we are making slow but steady progress. We're looking at some additional resource to support us specifically with addressing the email situation. But to put it in context, I worked out very roughly since the date of the report in November, let's say there's been about 80 working days. We're receiving 20 to 25 emails every day. So we've probably processed somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 emails during that period. And we've also brought the total number down. So the key is that additional resource that can focus on those emails and training the new staff. I would like to think that in a month's time when we come back, or the next arc when we come back with the next report, we will have made some I wouldn't want to use the word significant progress, but really good progress in reducing these as we train the two new staff and they really start to be able to do some critical process.
Roger, I've got supplementary to that. I think the issue for me is what worries me when I see you talked about having 400 unread emails. Some of those can actually be critical, and I just wonder whether the chief executive might want to consider a priority system where someone does read all of them, the 20 or so, and actually then prioritise them. Yes, that one will take some time, whereas this one can actually be resolved quite quickly. Right? Whether that's the saying is the contents have been reviewed and prioritised. I understand that, but when you got 400 unread? So that's the bit that actually is keeping me awake at night, is that fact that we've got 400 that are yet to be prioritised. And what's the communication back to the ratepayer that how long they would expect before they actually get a response? Now, unfortunately for my sins, right, I communicate with Air New Zealand on a frequent basis, and they go, we expect to get back to you within 7 working days. It's something like that there's an automatic response. So the person isn't then sending another email, you haven't responded to my email, you haven't responded to my email. Well, I just wonder whether there's a process about informing the ratepayer about the process automatically. Thank you, Roger.
So, Mr. Chair, just to answer that question, they do get an automatic response advising them that there will be some time before we respond, but that's not quantified, so I think we need to quantify that. Secondly, all the emails are prioritised, or that's what we're endeavouring to do. And a lot of those emails that are unread, we know, for example, they're for settlements. So we've parked those particular tasks and as a sort of second or third priority so that we can focus on other tasks. But those tasks will have to be completed before the new rating year commences. So they've still got to be done. But the all the emails as they come in are then triaged, and then they're put into particular categories for people to process. Now, the CRM process, which we're about to implement shortly, should give us much greater visibility and control around those external emails. So that's scheduled to go live on the 1st of March.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks for raising the auto reply. Very, very quickly, could I just ask, I don't need an answer now, but for you to double check that part of the process with the auto reply going to people emailing the rates team. I know that particularly the case that I was involved in definitely did not get any reply at all. So if we could just check that part of the process is working, because that would have solved a large part of it for me.
Thanks, Chair Kevin. It was a bit of a comment, really, I think, and I was thanks for the very open and full report. It was, I can see as we've gone on, we've certainly opened the door really to other issues. And Brian did make a comment that I was going to raise. I think in a lot of cases we are probably the authors of our own misfortune, really. And I think we've taken a very liberal and a very perhaps a very a very caring approach to debt collection and rates, and that probably has come to pass. And just looking at the press in the last month or so, I can see other councils have made comment about the increasing non-payment of rates. That seems to be a problem since the rate increases and since late last year. And that, to me, I'm sure will have some of those inquiries by email will be around debt rather than trying to fix the problem. So I think trying to keep our finger in the dike is probably pretty critical, because I'm sure we'll have a problem with just with rates with instalments 1 and 2, obviously, and that we'll have to watch that pretty carefully, I think.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, Roger, if I could just clarify, when you talk about settlement process, my interpretation of that is when a property is sold or changes hands, that is that final payment, that'd be on quite a set timeline that you have to respond to. Is that correct?
Yeah, my apologies, Mayor Tracy. It's not settlements, it's the subdivisions. So the subdivisions are the ones that were put off on hold. The settlements, yeah, as you rightly point out, have to be processed very quickly. So my apologies, that was my error.
Any further questions, points of clarification? Okay, so if we go back to the recommendation on 1.1, do I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Mike. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. As against, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roger, for that. Right, so we go way back in the agenda to 7.1, and our draft management letter. Sarah, is it the final one now that we've had your responses?
Good morning, Chair Phillip and councillors. I'm very privileged to have a couple of extra people with me online today, so without further ado, I might just hand it over to Fiona to provide an opinion from the audit perspective as to the draft management report that we have. And Fiona was also going to introduce Stephanie, but I think, Phillip, you've already done that. So if there's anything else you want to add, ladies, please feel free.
I had written down here to introduce Stephanie, but it sounds like I joined slightly later and missed that. So, Stephanie, I didn't know whether you had needed to say anything further or
Yeah, well, I can briefly
Sure.
say hello. So yeah, thank you for the introduction earlier. I have only fairly recently taken on this council as part of my portfolio, but have been with the Office of the Auditor General for a couple of years, and prior to that worked in local government for a long time, including with Brian, so about 17 years worth of that. So given that I'm in Whanganui, I've now taken on the Taranaki portfolio and Manawatu Whanganui, as well as looking after ports and the Canterbury councils. My role really is a relationship manager of sorts. So I'm responsible for the relationship with this council. So today was really an opportunity to say hello and to start building that relationship. So you have a face and a name if you need to reach out on anything. But other than that, I'll hand over to Fiona. But certainly I'm very willing to have further conversations with you.
It's my pleasure to present the 2024 management report. I'd have to say it's probably near finalisation. There were a couple of minor or more minor items that we were clarifying with Tararua, so management that we've just worked over the last week or so to do, and I've probably updated you a couple of those since the draft that you've got a copy of. I think it's a good news story. We've closed quite a few of the outstanding recommendations that were there from prior years, and including one further one, which was a part of that liaison with management over the last week around the sensitive expenditure and another prior year item that we've updated. There was a lot of work done with Debbie Pereira as a previous audit director, just to make sure that we were on the same page as to items that she closed in her management report or was intending to close, and what went through to the 23-24 management report as well. So they should line up now. Yeah, so in terms of the report overall, we've only got one new recommendation for this year that relates to the business asset process, which council management have already come up with what they're intending to do, and we will review that as part of this year's final audit. So I would be expecting that will be cleared as part of the 2025 final audit. Areas of focus with evaluations, and I think I've already alluded to that in previous meetings, that process has got a lot better this for 2024. We did a review of the impounded water supply and whether that needed to be impaired, and we concurred with council management on their what their accounting treatment was, and we're actively working with Raj and his team this year to further address some of those outstanding recommendations that are still in progress, with a view to trying to close as many of those this year as we can with these processes in place. And coming up with some practical solutions, maybe for some of those sticky ones that are just hanging around for a while, as to a pragmatic solution to look at closing those out. But if anybody has any questions, more than happy to take some questions on our report.
Any questions? Councillor Sharon, thank you.
Sorry, to the team on the screen or through to you, Sarah. Given that, our previous item here regarding the issue around our rates rebate and debt issues, where in the audit process for the upcoming year will that be looked at?
Can I just help there? I think we deal with that question on 7.2 because it's talking about the audit timeline for this coming year.
Fair enough. Yep, I'm just curious to understand.
I think go on notice. Thank you. Right. Any other questions? Oh. Are there any other questions? I think Sarah got off really lightly here, right? Right. So basically, we've got a recommendation there that we receive the report. Can I have a mover? Is that, do I see Councillor Peter put your hand up? Thank you, Councillor Peter. Thank you, Councillor Ellison. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Right. So the next item is 7.2, the audit timeline. Take the report as read. Is there any further information you want to bring? Is it all self-explanatory? Or Fiona? Thank you.
Just in terms of the audit timeline, obviously we're working quite closely with council management in terms of that. There's already planning underway. Areas of focus are largely expected to be the same as in the prior year. There are some new standards or revisions to standards where we might include those, and those relate to some service reporting information and the changes to the audit fee disclosures. Local waters done well, the 3 waters, there's likely to be some updates to that wording come through, and I know I've been talking to Debbie as part of our local skin group in terms of is there going to be any standard wording coming through for that and the disclosures that might be required for this year. So I think I'll probably watch that space because I think it'll be changing throughout the year, and Stephanie, you might have more of an idea of what might be happening in that space.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Fiona, just keeping a watching brief on that one.
Yeah. And in terms, I guess, of the rates, we do look at the rates, systems and processes as part of our interim, which I think is scheduled for May at this stage. And so we look at the rate setting processes. We will probably touch base around what's happening in that space in terms of the issues that you've had. In terms of the direct debit side of things, we wouldn't normally go into that level of detail in looking at that, but we'd be more looking at how there's any impact on the legality of the rates and if there's any issues there. But I think we'll be just keeping liaising with Raj and his team around that and then checking if we've got any issues, and then pass it through potentially to Stephanie as well, just to keep her updated around that. So I guess that's where we would probably see the work that we'd be doing around that area. That makes sense. And I did note that one of our recommendations related to reconciliations and the rates reconciliation at the end of the year was something that had been quite delayed over the last couple of years. So that is probably something that we've been looking to see, but having that background now, I can sort of see now why there would have been more delays there in terms of staff pressures and things and getting that done. But it's definitely an area we'll keep an eye on.
Are there any questions? Councillor Sharon, thank you.
Thanks, Chair Philippa, and it really is just supplementary to my inquiry, as you've so rightly pointed into this part of the discussion, but the ability for Audit New Zealand to do their role provides our community with the reassurance that this issue is being addressed in the way that an independent set of eyes can view. So I think it is important that we do raise it and ensure that in that interim period in May that we look to see what progress has been made. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Absolutely support what Councillor Wards was just saying. Thank you for giving us, a bit of a rundown of the scope, Fiona. But as you can probably see, this is a very topical and concerning issue for all of us in council and staff. It is really important somehow that we have that independent assurance that things are tracking in the way that they need to be, particularly with this issue where once the issue previously unknown was discovered, it actually opened up into a whole lot of other issues, which we just heard from Roger about before. So I guess I'm still sort of learning and understanding a little bit, Fiona, about what audit does and what areas, but could you just sort of touch a little bit again on perhaps what you might be able to cover in your audit in that space? Because we get asked this a lot by members of the community. Thank you.
So when we look at the rates, we look at the rate setting, whether it has been set legally, and there's a number of cross checks from your what you put in your rating figures and your LTP in your plans. Is that what goes into your actual rate system as the rates that are going to be charged? So it's probably at a more higher level, and it's covering off those legal bases under the Rating Act. Have the matters and factors been set appropriately as per the Rating Act? So that's where we look in terms of that side of things, and we look at the processes and controls you might have in place for making changes. We do it would be limited testing, and it is at a high level. So you would be expecting this much rates revenue from this rates category. Is that what you've got? Yes or no? Going down into individual rate payers, we wouldn't go into that level of detail. So I think that the issue, as I understand it from that came up previously, was something that we wouldn't necessarily have picked up ourselves. We do look at the end of year rates debtors, and probably this year we could just take a little bit more look at the makeup of that, but and how that's being managed. But that would probably be the normal level that we would go to. We wouldn't go much further than that in terms of what we do. We do look at whether you've had any legal reviews. So Subsidy Reason would normally do reviews over your rate setting. So I would suggest in terms of that you are liaising with your legal advisors around the issues that have come up. And we will look at that, and we will raise it through to the OAG if there is anything of concern that would affect a legal matter, because OAG will generally look at that on our behalf as part of that process. So that is probably the work that we'll be doing at the interim stage, and myself and the manager would review that work. And if we did have any concerns, we'd also let OAG know as well and get them to have a look at the findings if we needed to, and go through our local government sector group too. So there's a lot of experience there. But in terms of the actual day-to-day processing and managing of that, we wouldn't necessarily go into the nuts and bolts of that in great detail. So that would have to be your internal reviews and what you're doing through your own risk management processes to manage that. So I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense, not happy. Okay. I think just to clarify, right, maybe Stephanie might want to comment, the role of actually Audit New Zealand in the annual report, right, is actually right, I'm going to use bean counter language, right? Are the results and is the financial position, are they fairly reflected? Now that's bean counter gobbledygook, I know, right? But what their role is to say is, I'll go back to the old simple version. Are the results actually true and fair, right? So that's the role of Audit New Zealand. So when they're looking at the rates debtors, they're saying it's I'll pluck a figure out, $500,000, right? Is that actually right? And is that collectible? That is their role in terms of the annual report, right? If you wanted then some additional assurance, that it actually then requires an additional piece of work to be undertaken by Audit New Zealand or another independent person. I'm getting some nods, right?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, and I got Mike after you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And absolutely, that is the way that I understood it, and I quite enjoy your bean countering language. I suppose, though, where I remain a little bit confused with the process is we are well aware that what has been presented in our annual reports doesn't fairly represent what the outcome was, because we did not know that rates that were fairly, well, should have been collected were not being collected through the direct debit issue. And I suppose that's where I get a little bit confused, because there has been some rates throughout that process that were outstanding for 6 years because we didn't take enough. I know that that could have been challenging for it to have been picked up by audit until the rates increases made that amount a large amount of money. But going off how you've described the process, even though it may not have been huge throughout that entire 6-year period, there were rates that should have been collected that weren't. So if you could help me understand that better.
I'm going to speak Yeah. Mr. Chief Executive, if you'd like to comment, thank you.
I think Sarah better answer this better than I, but we do have debtors, so they have been collected. And just remember that the 6 years, no debt is 6 years old. And I think, we've explained this before, is that because they keep on rolling over. So in fact, the debts is only the last 12 months. The amounts have increased, but the time frames are a lot shorter. So it is a true reflection in terms of the annual report, but obviously we have also rated correctly. It's just the mechanism for collecting the rates that have been incorrect. So it is still sitting there as collectible rates. Do you want to expand on that? She might have the answer.
I was just going to give a little bit more information, just because numbers are my bread and butter as a bean counter. The debtors can't be manipulated. The total figure within the debtors is correct. That is what our Audit New Zealand have tested to. Brian is quite correct in which the debt was current or is not older than 6 years. Our doubtful debts collection is also, calculation, I apologise, is also audited under quite a bit of work by the audit team. So for us to say that the debtors in the financial statements is materially incorrect is wrong.
Through you, Chair. So what you explained before, the council would have to request from Audit New Zealand to do a particular investigation into one aspect of the finance.
Correct. So, correct, right? I'm going to refer to both Fiona and Stephanie here to nod their heads accordingly, right? Or shake if I've got it wrong. So basically, right, the issue is...
I was going to say there might be some methods whether we would be able to do the work, because we couldn't be doing work that we would be auditing. So it might have to be another party that does it, or whether it could be, we do have the specialist assurance services, but whether they would be able to do something that would be specifically going back and auditing later. I'm not sure that would be okay for it to be us per se that did that work, and whether it would have to be another external party that did that, or you do your own internal review process. There is always that option too. But if you're wanting that independent, then it would be an external party, I would. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Fiona.
Yeah, so the logic is the 6 years, the window, because that's what legally we can only go back to. Pre 6 years ago, everything was honky-dory.
Who knows?
Can you rephrase the question, right?
Well, we're in this because legally we can only go back 6 years if you read all the rules. And that's what they did. They went back 6 years. So you didn't go back 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. They didn't, like the audit guys up there aren't going to audit because they haven't got the facilities. They just said that basically they don't take a specific thing. So we don't know.
Can I put my rating,
Yes, please. This is what it's trying to clear the fog.
So legally, council, can you just turn your mic off?
Yep.
Legally, council can't collect rates that are more than 6 years overdue unless council has postponed the rates. Yep. So that's where that 6 year rule has actually come from. It's called statute barred. That's what the rates team refer to as being statute barred. So that's the issue, that once you hit that 6 year, council can't take any further action against recovering that rate. And any penalties up to this that have been assessed as part of that 6 years. So I think that's the question that has been raised, and my understanding is that no of this rating issue that we've talked about, no amount of debt have actually reached that 6 year threshold. So I'm not quite sure then what your question or statement then is.
Well, it self-eliminates because, as our CE said, it goes the year that we're talking about as it moves forward. Like the rates are in the now.
So I'm not.
Yeah, well, you imagine how we are. So that's all right, that's cool.
We might talk offline.
We will.
Okay, thank you. I've got the Mayor and then I've got Councillor Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. Listening to the conversation, I'm wondering if there's a place for an independent person, perhaps like the report writer Ross Franklin, to have a look at and review the actions and systems and processes, because I think what I'm hearing is confidence around this table that can be reflected back to the residents of the Tararua district. So I just thought I'd pop that there. I know it's not part of the audit discussion, but that's what I'm feeling and think would be beneficial.
I concur that would be a useful, if that's what the committee are actually looking for. I think the Chief Executive could actually re-engage Mr Franklin to do a bit of an assessment to say, are we on track? Is it reasonable where we've got to? I wouldn't anticipate it being a big piece of work, but I would leave that up to the Chief Executive to answer. Thank you.
Through Chair, so just I will need to talk to Ross because I think we did discuss this with him at the time, and I'm looking at Sandy now who's nodding her head around identifying some of that, and I felt that it was probably an overreach of his understanding of level in terms of those day-to-day process. The reality is that Eleanor and that type level are the experts in the process, so we did talk at some length with Ross about how far he could drill down. So he's identified that there needs to be process improvements. So that has been, acknowledged through his investigation and looking at our systems processes. They were the two main things that were picked up that we need to rectify. So the team is working on that. I think largely the issue has been created due to basically a lack of resources and lack of documentation. But there's also been some, obviously some of the issues around check-in and all that. But the process for collecting rates is the process for collecting rates. I'm just probably struggling to see the benefit at that level that Ross would be able to bring, because we did chat to him about this at the time. And we've started reviewing all these processes and putting improvements in place already. There's a number of process improvements that are already in place, even around the collection of the direct debits and how we do the bulk spreadsheets, etc. So there's plenty of improvements going on. I think my recommendation to the committee is that we let the process run how it is. There's a lot of those actions that we still need to work through, and certainly if there's anything that we come stuck on or we need help with, we certainly will reach out rather than trying to create something that might not be worthwhile. So that's my recommendation for now.
Councillor Peter, then I've just had a conversation with Sandy, which I'll explain.
Yeah, Chair
right?
Philip, pretty much my question's been answered, so I won't reiterate something that's been discussed.
Thank you. So what Sandy and I just talked about is Mike? The issue is that I think it's potentially a good idea, right? However, what I'm going to suggest is we've got another meeting on the 29th of April, 28th of April, right? Around about the end of April. My suggestion is let's look at the detailed report that we considered on 7.7 and then make some recommendations in terms of what are the additional assurance that the committee would actually like. Then there's a bit of work to be done. They've got the work plan there, they've got systems and processes, and what are the additional things that need to be considered as part of that report, rather than bring Mr. Franklin in at the moment. That would be my suggestion in moving this forward. Absolutely.
Just in addition to that, by that meeting as well, you would have been able to see the updated quarterly reporting on debtors to the Finance and Performance Committee, which also may help your understanding or assurance in that space.
Thank you for that. I think we've just alleviated some work for Audit New Zealand. Thank you. Are there any more questions on the audit timeline report? If not, I've got a comment. No, I won't let you move it because I've actually got a question. My question is actually, it's on page 46 of the agenda. I'm just going to highlight it for council, noting that the annual report and the audit will be ready the last week of October. Now, I'm sure you're all aware that on the 11th of October is a critical day for you. So I just wonder whether and you don't need to make a decision now, but other councils have actually had a draft audit report brought to the old council, not the audited one, but recommending that subject to audit, that annual report then be adopted by the new council. That saves a whole lot of grief with, if there are new members, then saying I had nothing to do with this annual report and I'm going to vote against the adoption of the annual report without actually understanding the consequences of what they're actually saying, right? Whether that's actually just something for council, you don't need to make a resolution on it, but just for council to consider and maybe as part of the audit and annual report timeline. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, you can respond. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Philip. I just wanted to reiterate that process would be similar to what we went through with the previous year's annual report, where we brought to a full council the draft that then went to the auditors, and then we told you every change that occurred when we went to the adoption process. So just so it's clear in your mind what that would look like.
But what I'm saying is it actually might be closer to the 11th of October than previously. So the audit might already have done some pre-work before that. You bring it to.
Yeah, we will have gone by that timeline. I don't know whether, I can't say what's going to happen because I know that for this year, because you're moving back into the normal statutory time frame, that is going to be a bit of work in terms of management getting back into that cycle. So that might dictate where we get to in the audit process by before that election timeframe, so that you can give an update for if there are going to be new members. I am aware there are some councils who are trying to sign before the election, but there's very much a very centralised process at about the councils that will be able to do that, which has been managed centrally by Audit New Zealand in terms of not everybody is going to be able to have an earlier time frame. When the statutory time frame is actually the 31st of October, but your suggestion seems very sensible, Philip, so at least briefing people so that they know that there is new members, that when it does actually come up for full adoption, that they've got some oversight of what it means or what they'll be adopting, and that makes sense to me.
Right, no further discussion. I think Councillor Steve wanted to move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next, item 7.3, our risk appetite development, page 47. Thanks, Stephen. Take your report as read. Are there any key highlights or further information you want to bring to the committee, please?
This one. Morena tātou. Thank you. In terms of the risk appetite, as I mentioned, haven't made as much progress as I'd hoped with this, so I'm looking to bring a more comprehensive report to April. But what I have found in discussions is that staff are finding this risk appetite helpful when they consider risk and council's attitude towards risk in their departments. And I also think there's value of reiterating it again now with the annual planning process getting underway. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Therefore, can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Councillor Peter, do I have a seconder? I think Councillor Carey, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Our next item is 7.4. Don't run away, Stephen. The risk management report.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly give a comment about the three management reports: the risk management report, the assurance management report, and the health and safety management report. Based on feedback from the committee, really looking to provide a more data-driven set of reports and align the reporting so it's easier to draw your attention to where the issues are. For example, we're using the same sort of colour coding and reporting style for our responses to audit comments as we do for our project management. So because we're treating them as projects, and also in the reporting, drawing your attention to where issues that have been identified are already in work programs as well. So hopefully, and keen for your feedback, but hopefully we're making progress in our reporting there.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Sharon, thank you.
Thanks, Chair Philip, and thanks, Steve. I know the effort that goes into getting the colours right and the explanations. I have two questions. Well, I have two issues highlighted, and they're already in red. Number 175 and number 46, where we reflect on controls not either complete or inadequate resourcing. And given the discussion that we've had earlier this morning, I'm curious to understand what thinking will go on as we move into an annual plan phase. Can we as council expect to see some initiatives or some programs where we get to debate whether or not some of these risks will get addressed in there? And I reflect in particular on item number 46, where staff resources are inadequate to successfully deliver. So as a council, can we expect from our senior leadership team, because it's great having colourful risk registers, but I'm very keen in ensuring that we as a governing board have the chance to reflect on are we going to be serious about addressing this through strategies in the upcoming annual plan? I guess I'm trying to set the bar to understand.
Through your chair, yeah, I think that's certainly been a hot topic for the executive leadership team at the moment as we go through, everything that's currently in the LTP through the integration of services, our land rationalisation. We're looking at some work being done around our asset management to ensure we're getting better alignment, contract management, to ensure that we're doing a lot better in that space as well. For example, can we group up some of those contracts? So I think we're certainly looking at roles and how we can get more for less. We've got a conversation with Carter coming up just around some of the strategy and policy areas, and in terms of if staff are leaving, how we can start filling those gaps as well. And there may be a mix of using consultants versus staff. We always prefer staff, but I guess the answer is that yes, we certainly will be looking how we get more operational efficiencies, and I know Sandy will be presenting at some CEO only time with a proposal that we'll be going out with shortly. So it certainly will be brought to this table as well for input.
Councillor Sharon?
Sorry, Chair Philip, in supplementary to that, I guess my question is through to you, Steve. As the annual plan gets developed, you're obviously fairly keen on applying a lens across all of those activities to ensure that we, the statement here, and it's directed towards Sandy, is that the PDPs have not been completed by all staff, and that's a pretty critical tool when it comes to enabling you as the CE and the senior leadership team to have all of those skills lined up ready to be able to deliver. So at what stage in the annual plan process could we expect that we have that reassurance from you that the addressing of our risks lens has been applied? Early, late?
What I will say is that this time round in the long-term planning process, there was quite a increase in focus on risks by activity managers, who are the owners of the risk for their department. And the reporting that you're getting here now is as a result of the risks, organisational risks that they have raised during the LTP. So I expect that will carry through. One growth area I think that we need to work on is having those risks clearly articulated in the workshop presentations, because I think they were articulated well in the activity management plans themselves, so it's carrying that through as well. So yeah, I think we made a good step forward in the LTP, and that's how we can now report on this stuff that we weren't reporting before.
And if I can add to that as well, ELT did have a strategy day a month or so ago, and one of the outcomes of that was to provide that risk lens across our operational activities at that level. So Stephen now attends the ELT operational meetings to place that risk lens across some of the discussions and some of the outcomes we get out of that, to ensure that we've got the risks also high up on that list.
Got something to add, Stephen?
So I have, thank you, through the chair. Peter Wimsett's online as well. In the risk management report, there's a section on local water done well, and the idea there was to give the opportunity to have a conversation. So maybe Peter would like to speak to that.
Thank you. Welcome, Peter. I've got some questions for you, but I'll let you lead off.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, we're working under quite a tight time frame presently. We're trying to corral 4 different councils simultaneously, which is under duress probably in some respects because of the short time duration we have. We do have those governance structures and management structures in place, and we've got by the end of this week to sort out a consultation document that is to a standard that achieves the primary outcomes. A minimum viable product is what we are calling it, just to make sure that we've got the legal aspects covered off, and that then each council can produce within those confines a document that will tick the boxes and also be a useful document to communicate with our community, because we are talking about significant change for local government if we proceed with the option to join forces with other councils. But any questions?
Any questions of Peter? Right, I've got one, Peter, or two. It's actually, so one of the things that actually keeps me awake at night, right? Everyone seems to be concentrating, as you've defined, or someone's written on page 53, key regulatory and financial settings are still emerging, so everyone's looking at the financials and the regulatory inputs. The bit that keeping me awake at night, as we're looking at these local water done well, and not three waters, is will the new entity have the capability and capacity to deliver what is going to be required of that entity? And I think to me is everyone's, looking at financially, yes, we're going to be better off, therefore we can achieve more. But are we actually going to end up with appropriate resources, and I didn't say people, deliberately didn't say people, that enables giving the entity, and therefore the council's assurance that you're going to have the right capability and capacity to deliver what's required. Now that doesn't mean to say everyone's going to need a super water engineer, but is there actually processes going to be in place that will enable efficient use of the resources, financial resources that are actually going to be delivered? Question, Peter?
So there's going to be a series of steps that are required. We're at the second stage of those steps. The first one was last year, determining who we should work with and what the options are. The next stage we're at, and that's in respect of how we are going to communicate that with our communities respectively, and how are we then going to deal with the feedback they give us. And then thirdly, depending on what the outcome of that is, because we are not predetermining that, we might have a preferred or proposed option that is most logical, which we will present in that manner, being most logical and affordable, perhaps, as the key message. Comes back, then we then have to either operate as status quo as one of those two options, and how we're going to comply with the new regulatory framework, Tomata Arawai and Commerce Commission, which starts 1 July. And whether we'll be operating under the proposed local government water services bill, which isn't due for adoption until June. So another trick. We don't know entirely how that will be completed and passed into law. And then once we've established which way we're going, which is probably sometime in May, June, we will simultaneously to that be working on the water service delivery plan that must be in play by 3rd of September. Must be with the local government minister by 3rd of September. So that's the next stage, is working out what that local water service delivery plan looks like, and whether it's going to be a joint one or whether it's going to be single, standalone. After that, we can start looking at how we might establish the new company or entity, the water organisation, which is how it's been expressed in the current bill. And we can do some pre-work leading up to that, but when it takes over, when it actually comes into creation, we can determine only following the consultation. So we need to get through the first stage that we're at now, or the current stage, which is consultation document. Come May, June, we can go to the next phase.
So can I just interpret your answer? What you're saying is that it's not on, that capability and capacity isn't on the immediate work plan, it will be on the work plan post consultation.
That is correct. However, we would expect, and this is the discussion to be had later, that even the establishment and the transfer of responsibility will be able to be done in a staged manner through contractual relations with the existing water service providers, being the councils.
Okay. We'll have a further discussion. It's not part of this agenda, but I think we need some further work on that. Any further questions? Thank you, Peter. Any other further questions or comments on our risk management report? Okay, can I? Sorry? You're happy to move? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Erina. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Next item is our Health, Safety and Wellbeing Management Report. Thank you, Stephen, yet again.
Thank you. If we can take the report as read. Again, just in this report, we've tried to give you an update on all of the issues that we are seeing as critical and linking them to the health and safety work plan that we have in place. Just one update since this report and the visit to the Pahiatua sites. Been having some conversation with the newly in place 3 waters manager and water and wastewater operations manager, who have brought a real focus on fatigue management in the team and have acknowledged all of the recommendations that are in this report. The problem is not solved. We are still short on resourcing. We still get too many alarms, but that focus I'm seeing just from worker feedback as well is really helping move the situation in the right direction in the immediate term. Have you any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Scott, thank you.
Surprise, surprise. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the report, Stephen, and I'm quite enjoying the format of it and the consistency. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I've got a couple of questions with your permission, Mr. Chair. Page 65, item 171, which was the gas vapour at the Pahiatua water treatment plant. Within the narrative of that, it says an updated timeline for this work will be provided when available. Could we have an update as to when that is likely to be available? It's just an issue we've talked a bit about, and I'm very keen to see what we're looking at doing with it.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the question, Councillor Scott. So with the change to our new 3 waters manager, there's a renewed effort in getting those projects underway, and certainly including this one. So we're hoping in the next month or so, but it's a contractor availability challenge at the moment. So we'll update us in the next ICCM probably when that's been completed.
Further questions? Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to jump now to page 69, where it talks about the all-staff survey that was conducted in November. Great to see that has been done. And look, from a governance perspective, usually we don't get too operational or need the operational detail, apart from when it comes to safety, when it becomes quite appropriate that we are. So my request with that is that this committee receive the full results from that survey, the full results from the staff health and safety survey.
So normally council don't really see all the information, but yeah, I'd be happy just to sort of explore that.
Thanks for that. That would have raised some other questions, so thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I think that would be helpful. My next question is page 70, and this was the Get Home Safe app. Looking at the utilisation, I know this is something I've mentioned before, but still a little bit concerned at the low level of utilisation for this tool. So wondering if it is the right tool or how we might be able to make that a more non-negotiable safety tool. So I'm quite keen for your insights into that because I know you've been giving it some thought.
Yes, thank you. So the Get Home Safe app is our preferred way of providing a way for managers and supervisors to be aware of where their team is, for the team to be able to get help when they need it and stay in communications with council. The app was part of the lone worker policy that came through the committee and is a key part of that. We've also asked managers of staff to go through and do risk assessments for their staff who work alone or remotely. Remotely being out of cell phone range really, or like for some of our team who are working out towards the coast, and I think of like Three Waters doing the sample run and working. So we've done those risk assessments, and Get Home Safe was identified in there as being a key control. The thing that hasn't happened is that it hasn't translated into use. I can say that our best users of the app who use it every single day is a water treatment plant operator who uses it every day, and the other one that uses it every day is a refuse transfer station operator. So we know that it is a usable tool, and so I think that and I have explored other options, and really what they point to is moving back to a human-driven process where supervisors and managers are keeping eyes on as being the only feasible alternative. Things like e-roads and so forth are helpful, but they don't provide any way of giving feedback from the worker if there's a problem, which is what we need. So I think, yes, it is about setting expectations about this being a not negotiable tool. I think that's, and to help that process, Gillian and I, another step is to start giving more direct feedback about where we believe it should have been used and it's not being used, so that can be addressed on an individual basis.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a couple of reasons why I mention it, so it's something I'll certainly be sort of reviewing, so I'm quite keen to still see those stats coming through the report. It is also a little bit of an indicator, though, on people following safety procedures, so something that does become a non-negotiable, seeing that if we're not seeing an improvement, then that could indicate that other safety requests or instructions may not be being followed at the same time. So I just wanted to flag that as the context for my question. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Philip. Yeah, I thought that was in place after that accident down Munga. I mean, he sat there all night with a broken back. I thought it was mandatory.
So Get Home Safe has been a tool that we've been using for several years. I believe the incident you're talking to relates to a contractor. Yes.
The married chap.
Yep. And so I guess just like any sort of regulatory system, we're going through the process of providing our staff with the education, with the training, with the understanding of the why, making sure that they have a clear view on why this tool is important to them. And as Stephen, I think, has explained, we're now getting to the point where we're looking at those situations where it should have been used and it didn't. So, you know, you go through the training and the education, and now we get to the point where we might be looking towards the enforcement side of things.
Supplementary, wouldn't that be a big why? A good reason?
Sorry, would what be a
Wouldn't
good
that
why?
be a good reason, a broken back?
Yes, absolutely. We've certainly given
Pardon me?
examples.
Oh, so that, okay. But I mean, okay,
We've
let's
certainly
forget who they're
given-
employed by, but isn't that a good example to enforce what we're trying to get people home from work?
Absolutely.
Because we go to work, we go into the chamber and we sign in, or wherever we go out at Downers, we sign in and sign out. I.e., it's just part of your job. It's like putting your safety belt on in your car. You put your safety belt on, you drive down the street, you get out of your car, take your safety belt off.
I completely agree with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? I've got one. It's slightly off topic. You would have seen that Rotorua District Council were taken to court by WorkSafe for what appeared to be an unreasonable health and safety issue where there was a tomo created and someone fell in it almost straight away. What is your view on WorkSafe? Are they actually focused very much on council, and does that actually create an additional risk for council that we need to have a higher standard than what is required by the legislation to avoid those challenges, or have they learnt their lesson with Rotorua?
Yes. I thank you. Yes, and we have had experience with WorkSafe recently, and I wouldn't say the focus is on councils, but what I am seeing, and maybe that's a report that needs to come through to the committee, is WorkSafe prosecutions are focusing on the work done, not policies and processes. What I mean by that is we can say, and maybe this is our Get Home Safe example, we can say we have all the policies and processes in place to protect our workers, but when WorkSafe look at a prosecution, what they say is, but how is the work actually being done? And that's the part that we need to, and hence our reporting about, are our controls in place, are they being followed? Because that's where the WorkSafe focus is at the moment.
So yeah, and just to add to that, and we've had the same sort of discussion around, you know, encouragement and then direction in terms of following health and safety, and that's where we're at now, is that we're being more directive in terms of what we require and what we want, and what we've discussed. If those directions aren't being adhered to, then we look at our options from that point in terms of a direction that's not being carried out, and obviously these code of conduct things in place to help address those. So we certainly are at that stage. and that's because of the discussion, well, not just because of that discussion, because exactly what Stephen said is this focus now on, you can say all you want, you can have all the best processes, policies in the world, and if people aren't following all of those, then what are you doing about it? Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Right, no further questions?
Thank you, Chair Philip. I don't know whether this is the appropriate forum for it, but I'm being shoulder tapped and getting phone calls from Pahiatua people who are very, very concerned about the tree that was damaged in the main street, that a third of it fell down. I've even had an arborist come to see me to ask what is council doing about it, because he is really concerned that it is a huge safety risk. And he's been an arborist for years, so we've not heard anything more since the Tree Smart came the day after, and we've not seen anything happen at all. And we're meant to be risk averse, and I just think we need some sort of report on where that's at and what's going to happen to that tree, because he believes that it will split. He reckons it split right through the trunk. Facilities managers are not arborists.
Through you, Chair Philip. Thank you, Councillor Franklin. I spoke to the team yesterday about where things are up to with the tree in Pahiatua, and they're still assessing what they're going to do about it. But I can send you all later an update on exactly what's being done and what the next steps are. I'm happy to do that today.
Thank you for that. I've been really concerned. Honestly, people are stopping me in the supermarket, what's going to happen with that tree. But the gentleman that's come to see me, he's a retired arborist, and he's really concerned about the risk of that tree if it's not sorted.
Right. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? So we've got a recommendation on page 59. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Steve. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. Against carried. And can I suggest we adjourn for 10 minutes and come back at 11:12? Bye. Okay, let's reconvene this meeting, and next item is 7.6, page 73, the assurance report. Thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. Take the report as read. One thing that I wanted to mention first around audit recommendations, whether they're internal audits or Audit New Zealand audits, they've definitely seen a shift over time in council seeing audit recommendations as an opportunity to improve and mature, and so that's been really helpful for me as I work through this. I work through the management of audit recommendations, and also point out that based on feedback, we've moved almost all of the recommendations to having a time frame for the management response for the project. So this is like a stake in the ground, and I haven't put any that have missed time frames before, but that's what we'll be reporting on from now on, anything that misses the time frames and why there might be delays. So that's the overview. I also wanted to say there was an update on the dam safety section, which is on page 81, because there's been some work done since, as mentioned in the report, but we've actually had that work done now, so I don't know whether you want to give a quick update.
Through you, Chair Phillip. So we've recently had the divers in the impounded supply. They've gone in and marked out the depressions, which luckily haven't changed since the last time they were there, but they've also repaired 3 pinholes. Well, so pinholes about the size of a pen sort of hole. And those repairs have held really well. And what we've noticed in the outflow is that the amount has dropped away considerably, to the point where we've had to change the parameters of our alerts because it's so low. It's almost, you wouldn't notice it if we weren't looking for it. I think we're sort of at that stage with the amount of water leaking from the dam. So it's quite good news in that space. So long may it last. But we'll continue to monitor. And the good thing with the marking is that we can now send our own drone in there to have a look. Blair on our team has the tool to be able to do that, so we'll be monitoring it more regularly. And then, yeah, good news at this stage.
Any questions? Councillor Mikes, Councillor Scott. Yep.
Through you, Chair. The level of leak before the 2 or 3 pen holes were filled in, what was it, please?
Around 2.5 litres a second.
And it's gone down to what?
Around 0.5 litres a second. And originally, before we did any repairs, and I may have this slightly wrong, but it was around 30 litres a second.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Just 2 quick questions on this. Firstly, do we think that there's no new depressions and things are holding well because the impounded supply is being run at that slightly lower level, or is it just that perhaps we could run it at a higher level and it wouldn't make much difference? Have we had sort of any indication of why things seem to be holding so well, or is that crystal ball gazing?
Through you, Chair Phillip. So my gut feel, I suppose, is that those depressions are caused by water moving under the liner. So the fact that we've managed to I guess, fix those leaks, stop the water moving underneath it, has sort of stopped that movement, or at least slowed it enough that things seem to be settling a little bit.
Question, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that, Hamish. There is a perception from some out in the community that council is not doing anything with the impounded supply, and we are lucky enough in this committee and in other committees to be getting regular updates and to be hearing what's happening. I'm just wondering how we are looking at communicating, because that sounds like very good news to me, how we're looking at communicating that out to the public so they know what is happening, but also that the water supply currently isn't in any danger. So I just think that could go a long way to letting people know that action is being taken, it's being monitored, and it sounds like things are very, very stable at the moment.
Through Chair Phillip, yes, certainly a good point to share that news out. The repairs were only completed last week, so we've only got 3 or 4 readings at that level. I think maybe a few more will give us a bit more confidence that it's stuck, and then we'll certainly tell that story again. Bearing in mind we're still going to be doing the work to increase the storage of the treated supply and the pre-treatment so that we can deal with the high turbidity challenges for the river. So those will still be coming. We'll certainly share that out as well. Cheers.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. Yeah, just a quick one. You know, the last time that the markings rubbed off, so they've got permanent marker on there now, and which I suppose is lucky that they did rub off because you wouldn't have found the 2 other pinholes now.
Yeah, yes.
So going forward, we could probably tell everyone we're in a state of because that weight thing, you know, a litre of water is a kilogram of weight, as we all know. So if we probably do fill it up a bit more, we could actually inadvertently create another problem.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're pretty comfortable it's stable at the moment, so
right.
We're not too keen to mess with it, and especially in the situation we are now, where we're not in a situation of drought. For the rivers are still at the point where we can extract from them. So while we're supplementing a little bit from the dam at the moment, it's not unsustainable. So.
And what cycle do you put your new aqua thingy in there, the cam? Do you go in every 6 months, or do you go in every month, or is there any cycle of looking in there?
So now that the depressions are marked
yes.
by the divers, we'll be looking to go in probably once a quarter to check to see how they're doing.
Once a quarter, but you won't go in with divers, will you? You're just the remote robot.
Yes, send a remote operated vehicle in there.
Right, that's great, because we can tell all the people. You know, we're always, you wouldn't believe how much stuff we get. Well, you probably do actually. Thank you.
I believe you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? I've got one for Stephen. Thank you. The question on the number of items are on hold. So how this the rationale for why they're on hold, and I just don't want them to be on hold for the next 12 to 18 months. So if you could just maybe in the next report give us a bit of an update as to a revised schedule would be appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Page 83, 8.5, the insurance review for council buildings with the status that this work is in progress. Wondering if we could get an update as to progress on that project or on that piece of work. Really keen to be monitoring this. This is, something that we've discussed as a committee and as a council, and something that can directly reduce some costs.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore, for your question. With regards to the review for council buildings, so a lot of this, we have to follow a process, which you obviously are all well aware, with the land rationalisation work still being underway. We're still in the process of moving our asset register for our buildings into RAM, which we've talked about quite a bit as well. The next piece of work that we would like to do would be our insurance strategy, because this feeds into your risk appetite, which feeds into the risks that we're willing to adopt. I'm not sure if that's the right word, proceed with our insurance and how we insure these buildings. I understand that we are wanting a lot of work done in this space and quite a quick turnaround, and I sympathise with that. We do have at the moment the Aon, we're still waiting on a proposal to come back from them to help us with a lot of this work within our infrastructure space, but we'll also feed this work into our building space. I haven't really given you much of an update or given you a timeline of when things might happen, but once we get these extra little pieces, we'll be in a better position to commit something to.
Mr. Chair, just that is included regularly as a heading in these reports so we can keep a track of it. That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. Yes, I was going to bring up the same comment, but what I'd like to see is a dollar amount saved through reduction in insurance cover, and not just some general statement like there has been a saving. I want to see a dollar figure if that's possible.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. From our conversations with Aon and knowing what other councils have recently gone through similar exercises with Aon, I know Wanganui, for instance, have done a lot of work in this space, coming through a workshop sort of setting. There are other ways in which we can make material savings to our premiums, and we just need to bring all those options to you so that we can then make an informed decision. But all of this work needs to come out of your insurance strategy, which should be informing our insurance policies.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions or comments? Can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Councillor Peter, seconded Councillor Steve. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. We've done 7.7. Next item is our Tararua Alliance Quarterly Report, page 91, item 7.8. Thanks, Dan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Oh, good morning. Good morning. Close. So in regards to this report, we do have a number of the audits that have been carried out on the Tararua Alliance to report to for the 23-24 financial year with the financial audit and the performance audit. This is, the 23-24 year was the first year that we used the new performance framework. So overall, we're really happy with the results of that framework in regards to how attentioned the new KPI targets that we have in the report, the framework is, and I'll highlight that as we move through that financial report. But in regards to just other information to provide before we touch on them, we do have some zero harm statistics, which is just highlighting. We have had a reduction in regards to our near miss reporting from our team. We actually aren't receiving near miss reporting from the team at the moment, so we're trying to make a bit of effort into encouraging staff to be putting forward those reports, because I am confident that it's not a case that they're not happening, it's just that they need to be putting those forward. So we're encouraging that. But overall in the zero harm space, we have had a positive trend in regards to our TRIFA rating, which is just recording lost time injuries and other reported injuries, as we're currently sitting on 0 for that. We have had a couple of first aid instances, but they're very minor instances, so we're on a positive trend. Regards to the auditing, on page 92 at the top there with the safety conversations and inspections, we're tracking reasonably well with the consistency on our team carrying out those audits and inspections. However, we are working to try and increase that, as we're currently sitting at about 72% of our overall target of our staff carrying out those audits, and we'd like to be sitting at least 90%. Below that, with the performance framework still on 92, so this is an internal quarterly audit that we've carried out for the 24-25 year, which is just highlighting where we're currently sitting with the KPIs within this financial year. You can see majority of our tracking is above the targets that we have in place, except for a couple at the top there with stakeholder perceptions and purpose, vision and strategy. So it's just a couple of KPIs there that we're currently working on, which is around getting our target cost estimates signed off for this financial year. So the target for that is January and September, and those were submitted through in December. So a bit of a delay with the target cost estimates this year, which has been also picked up through the financial audit. There has been a significant improvement in our strategic and operational performance space. What was letting us down in the past in this space was the timeliness of our response to customer requests. So we weren't hitting our targets recently with our report target of 90%, and we're currently sitting above that at the moment, so we have had improvements in that space. So just moving on to the audit. So the financial audit isn't part of the public forum. Obviously there's commercial sensitivities within that report, so we can talk about that after. But in regards to the performance audit, I know this is generally only talked about once a year, so just to basically a bit of a reminder about how the process works with our performance audit and our target cost estimate. So every year we set target rates across as much of our activities that we deliver as possible, and then basically depending on how we deliver against those target rates, so if depending on how much less we are, depends on how much goes into a performance pool. So, and if we go over that, then we end up in what we call a pain. So it's the pain gain model that we've touched on in the past. So depending on how much we have in our gain, 50% of that gain goes into the performance pool, and then depending on how well we score against our performance framework, depends on essentially how much down they get of that potential performance pool. And I'll basically touch on how much that is as part of the non-public part of this report. But apart from that, if there's any questions, happy just to go through the audits, and as questions come up, happy to answer them.
Thank you. I think we'll just take the rest of the report. Are there any questions on the rest of this report? Yeah, councillors.
Yeah, why are we still waiting on NZTA audit?
Oh, sorry, I didn't touch on NZTA audit. So yeah, we just haven't had our results back yet. I'm not sure why. We've been following with NZTA to try and get the technical audit results back. So I'm not sure they didn't give a reasoning as to why we haven't received it. So we'll continue to follow up with them. We did, as part of the audit itself, when it was carried out, we did get positive feedback. It's just we obviously need to formalise what that is and what recommendations they've made, but we haven't received it back. I'm not
I only feel for you guys. You do the work, they do the audit and don't get back. Somebody's chasing something, or getting paid for doing something. Not.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions. I just think, just noting on page 94 that we've got a new auditor. We're pleased to see that. Right, as I've said to this committee before, well, it's not a direct conflict of interest. I know Brian Smith very well professionally. And of course, I'm pleased to see that there was a successful handover to the new auditor. So thank you for that, and look forward to meeting Shelley virtually soon. Thank you. No further comments?
Sorry, I do just have one comment to make in regards to the auditors. So yes, we have a new financial auditor, as Chair Phillip mentioned. We also, Dave McDonald, who carried out the performance audit, has also highlighted that the 23-24 performance audit would be his last audit. So now we're in discussions around who will be the new performance auditor for this financial year and going forward. So we'll keep the committee updated on how we progress with that.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. Just in regards to the NZTA audit, I've made a note on my agenda, but just confirming that will come to the next ARC meeting, so that people can have, I guess, an eye overview of that. It's we probably get a lot of questions from the public, and I think it's great for transparency and for understanding. I often talk about that auditing process. So just if we could have something noted for the next ARC, if that's through, that'd be great.
Thank you for that. No further questions. Can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 91? Councillor Carey. Do I have a seconder? Worship the Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you, Dan. Next item is can we have a mover to move into public excluded? Mayor Tracy, second Councillor Steve. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. I'll wait 2 seconds. Do Fiona and Stephanie, do you want to stay in and listen to the public excluded on the Tararua alliance and what's on our elected members' security, or otherwise we're going to put a resolution that you actually stay.
I'm happy to stay if that's okay.
Fiona?
I'm happy to stay as well.
Okay, all right, we'll just note that, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not sure all the councillors are in agreement with members and the auditors staying online for these conversations.
The council is happy that OAG and Audit New Zealand stay for this.
We don't have this in their room.
So normally, Chair, just to clarify, if it is public excluded, we have provision, I guess, for a councillor, but I'll always check with a councillor who's in the room. It is and we don't have that assurance, but I'm not sure that's the only concern for councillors. We haven't done this before, so have you got any other, I guess, precedent where this has been carried out in a public excluded manner?
Normally, right, and Audit and OAG legally have a legal obligation to see anything, right, including reviewing the minutes of all public excluded meetings, right. So basically, when an audit is undertaken, the audit have actually a provision basically that they, now correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie or Fiona, they've actually got a legal right to actually see any information that council holds. So it's actually quite a high threshold, right? I think the question that you're asking is, with insurance that it's only Stephanie and Fiona who are actually in the physical room or can actually hear the meeting. Yeah, I think that's, but from the observation before, both Stephanie and Fiona had headphones on.
Yeah, and yes, we do review all the public excluded minutes for both council and audit and risk as a matter of course. And I recently was at the Wellington City Council Audit and Risk Committee and was in the public excluded. That's where the audit New Zealand stuff sat within the public excluded. So
Thanks for that. I'm comfortable.
All other elected members comfortable? Comfortable is probably the right terminology. All right. Okay, so we are.
So give me a minute to stop the stream.
Yeah, okay, we'll just stop streaming. Okay, right, closing karakia.
Let the winds of the Ruahine and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you. For we are the Pounamu of Te Tāpere Nui o Whātonga. Kia ora.
Thank you. Closed. Now I look forward